Hey people, welcome to the Run Testers. Today we are talking super shoes. This one comes from ASICS. It's the Metaspeed Edge Tokyo. It's the sibling to the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo. The Edge is designed specifically for runners or for cadence runners who turn their legs over fast rather than striding out when they pick up the pace. Now, the Metaspeed in both its forms, Edge and Sky, will prove popular in the sort of Paris editions of last gen. And the Edge brings some interesting updates, including improved uppers, a new midsole setup, and some notable weight savings. So is it a better shoe, and how does it compare to the other big hitting carbon racers? Well, let's find out in our multi-tester review of the ASICS Metaspeed Edge Tokyo. Design details first then. On stack, the Edge Tokyo stay the same as the Edge Paris, packing 39.5mm in the heel, 34.5mm in the forefoot for a 5mm drop. One big difference, however, is the weight. It now weighs in at 171 grams or 6 ounces in my UK men's 8.5, US 9.5 test shoe, which is impressively light and much lighter than its predecessor. But in running shoe world, what comes down must go up, and you're going to pay for that weight saving. It now comes in at £240 or $270. That's up $20 in the US and the UK. So let's take a closer look at the ASICS Metaspeed Edge Tokyo, starting with the midsole, which features a dual foam setup that combines a top layer of ASICS new lightweight and bouncy Flight Foam Leap foam with a bottom layer of Flight Foam Blast Turbo Plus foam, which is the foam in the Edge and the Sky Paris. The Leap foam is soft, cushioned and compressive, and ASICS says it's 15.2% lighter, 13.7% bouncy and 30% softer than the Flight Foam Blast Plus Turbo. That's there to provide comfort and life directly underfoot, while the Flight Foam Blast Turbo adds some stabilising and control. Sandwiched between those two foams, there is a curved full-length carbon plate that sits lower in the stack than in the Sky Tokyo. That positioning is designed to work with shorter steps, helping quick cadence runners generate propulsion efficiently. Up top, you have got Motion Wrap 3.0 engineered mesh uppers. They're incredibly light, breathable and race ready. You've got a really stripped back tongue and sort of thin and minimal heel padding, all of which are there to shave off the grams. When you flip them over, you'll find a thin layer of ASICS grip rubber outsole targeted in the key wear zones. It's light, sticky and durable, and that is definitely designed to be kind of race day practical rather than for grinding out big training miles.
So when it comes to the fit of the ASICS Metaspeed Edge Tokyo, I've got my normal size here, which is a UK 9, US 10. That's the size I use across the ASICS range and I use with the other Metaspeed shoes, and I've gotten really well with the fit of the Metaspeed Edge Tokyo. It's a little bit more dialed in and tight around the toes than the Easy Day shoes in the ASICS range, like the Nimbus and the Novablast on the same side, but I've still got plenty of room around my toes, good hold around the heel and midfoot. I find it a really comfortable and breathable, lightweight racing upper, so no concerns for me in my normal size.
So let's start with fit, and it looks like a racing shoe. It most definitely fits like a racing shoe. This is a racing shoe that is light, super breathable and well ventilated as well. So thin that you will be able to see your socks through this upper. Now, it is narrow in places, I would say, particularly around the heel collar and in the middle of this shoe. It does open up pretty well, I would say, in the forefoot, and I've been very happy with the space there, and it kind of tells you that this is a shoe that is designed for kind of racing and kind of running longer distances in, and as I said, I was very happy with the room there in that forefoot area. Other things worth mentioning here. Now, I don't absolutely love these laces that ASICS use on the Metaspeed line. I definitely think there's better options than other shoes, and it does mean that trying to get a good lockdown over that kind of tongue does take a little bit of work, but once they are in place, it's been absolutely fine. Get round to this heel collar, you're not getting a massive amount of material beyond the tongue, but when you get further back, there is a little bit more padding there. It's not a huge amount, but it's just enough there to kind of offer a little bit of comfort, control and stability around that area. The heel counter actually is probably one of the more structured areas of this kind of very unsupported or unstructured kind of upper in general, so you are getting a little bit of firmness there, which again I found comfortable, not caused any kind of irritation, and I've got a good lockdown in general at that part of the shoe. So I would go again for my usual size, which is a UK size 8. That is the same size that I've got the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo, the Metaspeed Ray, also the previous Edge shoes as well. And I feel like for most people, going true to size in a shoe should be absolutely fine.
Quick word on fit then. I ran in a UK 8.5, US 9.5. That's my regular shoe size in all the old Metaspeeds and regularly in ASICS. And I found the fit of these Actually really good, spot on. There is a decent amount of clearance towards the end of the toe box. You can see my toes here, so there's lots of wiggle room. There is clearance across the top of the toes as well. The midfoot holds really well. The uppers are really light and breathable and airy. They hold well here. No knuckle pinching, which is really good but nice and secure. Heels held well. I got good lockdown, and I think everything is good on this shoe. I really enjoyed the fit of it for racing, and I would recommend going true to size. Now, before I get into the run test, I've got a couple notes for context. This is the first time that I have run in the Metaspeed Edge. I didn't get to test the last iteration, the Edge Paris. I did run a lot in the Sky Paris, and I absolutely loved those shoes. They were one of the best carbon race shoes I've had the pleasure to use. Ran a PB in those shoes. But I've also not yet tested the new Sky Tokyo, so I can't draw all the comparisons or conclusions across the generations and across the two different sort of types of shoes. Also, I'm going to be honest, I don't really know if I'm a stride or a cadence runner. I'm sure I'm not alone in not really knowing entirely that distinction. I think I'm more of a cadence runner, and so the Sky should suit me more. And the Sky Paris was a PB shoe for me. But I've also found I can shift in the Edge Tokyo, so take from that what you will. Anyway, moving on to the Edge Paris. In testing, I've logged around 25 miles in this shoe. I've done a couple of 8-milers, one with 6 miles at marathon pace or slightly faster. The other I did slightly slower than marathon pace. I've also done some slower miles to see how they hold up when you're not punching at all-out pace. And the first thing that you notice, I think, is how incredibly light this is for the stack that you're getting. It's not quite Ray Tokyo light, which is mad light, but it's impressively minimal. It almost vanishes on the foot and feels instantly race ready when you lace them up. And then when you get moving, that barely there feel is really excellent. It's among the best that I've had. Then underfoot, the Edge is very springy. I'd say more spring, less snap than the Sky Paris. If the Paris had a sort of snappy propulsion to it, I think the Edge Tokyo are more of a like compress and bounce, a bit more trampoline than a slingshot. I still found it smoother though than some of the more aggressively bouncy carbon shoes like the Hoka Cielo X1-2 or the Saucony Endorphin Elite 2. It's highly cushioned with lots of bounce and energy, but I think it's not too wild like some of those shoes can be. There's some tempering of the sort of highly compressive leap foam from that Flight Foam Blast Plus bottom layer, and I really like that. You kind of get less stiffness and snap than the Metaspeed Sky Paris. Though some may welcome that it's sort of less harsh, if you want to call it that, particularly deeper into longer mileage runs. And if you wanted more protection than the Sky Paris provided, I think this definitely does offer that. But I still find that it's fast and energetic and efficient. In my tests, I found I was moving faster in these at lower heart rates than I would expect. In my 8-mile across central London as well, I was pretty surprised to see some of my mile splits when compared to the work I felt that I was doing at the time. They were also really nicely agile weaving through the crowds, and the grip is definitely a positive here. That outsole is top. The other thing I noticed is there's more in the heel, and I think that helped boost the kind of reliability of my landings at slower paces. I'd say it's certainly more accommodating than you get with the Sky Paris. That shoe could leave you a little bit exposed if you weren't moving well. So, this is an upgrade, I think, in terms of the Edge Tokyo, if you're thinking about sort of deeper into marathons when form can get a bit ragged.
So I've run around 100k in the ASICS Metaspeed Edge Tokyo, using it for a mix of hard training runs, including a pretty speedy 20-miler during my marathon training, a couple of track sessions, long tempo runs. I've also done a couple of sessions where I've used it and the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo and indeed the Metaspeed Ray to try and compare these three new ASICS shoes kind of more directly. And I guess one of the reasons I've done so many miles in the Edge Tokyo is that I really was trying to give it a fair crack of the whip to see if I liked it more than the Sky Tokyo this year. I kind of thought this was the year I was going to like the Edge Tokyo more. There's a lot of hype around this shoe. It's got the layer of FF Leap foam on the top compared to the bottom in the Sky Tokyo, which maybe gives you that slightly softer underfoot feeling. I think when I've seen elites racing ASICS shoes, they seem to be preferring the Edge Tokyo, but no, I still prefer the Sky Tokyo. The Edge Tokyo just didn't click with me in the same way. I think it is a really effective and fast shoe. Every run I've done in it has felt very fast, and I've hit all the paces I've wanted to hit, and swapping between it and the Sky Tokyo, I haven't seen a huge difference really in terms of performance, but the feel of the Sky Tokyo is better to me. So with the Edge Tokyo, you've got that more scoot plate, and you get, I think, a bit more oomph from the midfoot, but it kind of hits quite heavy on the forefoot for me. I find it a little bit slappy, even when I'm running at quite relaxed paces, and certainly when I go to faster paces, it does feel a bit slappier to me. You get a nice amount of bounce off the forefoot, but it's not as responsive there for me as the Sky Tokyo is. I feel like I really get a lot of lift off the toes with the Sky Tokyo. And with the Edge Tokyo, maybe it's that midfoot driving the higher cadence style that it's meant to do, which, I am a high cadence runner, but I haven't ever really clicked with the Edge in the same way I have with the Sky, and that remains the case even with the Edge Tokyo, which, like I say, I do think it's a really good shoe, and having the FF Leap foam directly under the foot and with that big wedge under the forefoot in particular might give an element of extra comfort to it over the course of something like a marathon. But I never really have any problems with the Sky Tokyo on that front, and although the Edge Tokyo did feel very good on that 20 miler I did, where I think that I did the second half of it in 10 miles in 60 minutes kind of thing, it felt good, turnover was good, but I just didn't like the way the ride feel felt as much as I find with the Sky Tokyo and a few other carbon shoes. But this is a personal taste thing. I do think the Edge Tokyo is a very good racing shoe, and I think lots of people will prefer it to the Sky Tokyo. I really think it will come down to the ride feel you prefer rather than any particular running style thing. I know ASICS pushes that quite hard, but for me it's just a difference in ride feel. It does feel slightly different on the run, and I prefer the feeling of the Sky Tokyo myself. Maybe others will disagree and prefer the Edge Tokyo. And if you do prefer it, you are going to get a really good racing shoe here. That's one thing that's come across in all the runs I've done with it. From very short, sharp reps on the track to that 20 miler or a long tempo, those kind of things. It's always felt fast, lightweight, really effective in pushing you forward and giving you a fast ride, and a ride that's easy to maintain. Like, I always found that I could hold paces quite easily in the Metaspeed Edge Tokyo, faster paces that is, in the way you expect from a carbon shoe, and the weight is super lightweight. Like, really the only shoe I've tested that's lighter is the ASICS Metaspeed Ray, which part of the reason for that, it doesn't have a full carbon plate and it's a bit wobbly and all that kind of stuff. You've got a much more secure ride here with the Edge Tokyo, and it's one I think that lots of runners will love. It's really just going to be a toss-up, I think, for lots of people between the Sky and the Edge.
Okay, so into that run test. Now, I have tested and raced previously in Metaspeed Edge shoes. I've enjoyed running and racing in them. They are lively, bouncy, kind of fun to run fast in. And the quality that I'd associate with all of the Metaspeed line is that your legs don't feel terribly beaten up. I would say that particularly around the Sky and the Edge shoes. Now into that running time. Now I've just ticked it over 50k in the Metaspeed Edge Tokyo. And I would say this is probably my favourite version of the Edge line. And I'm very early testing with the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo, but I'm definitely warming more to the Edge, and I'll explain why that is. Now, some of the criticism I had of previous Edge shoes was that it was maybe a little bit firm in places, definitely, unstable as well. I think you could probably level that at the Sky when you start to tire. I think the changes here do make this shoe more stable. I think, it's still going to be, for a lot of people, an unstable shoe, but I do think the differences between the previous Edge and this Edge, it definitely has improved on that front. I think adding in that FF Leap here as well, which we saw in a more, I would say, extreme example with the Metaspeed Ray, it's super soft, still fast and lively, but very unstable. Now, I think adding or keeping that FF Turbo Plus in here, combining the two things, having that plate there, you still get a fast shoe, a shoe that kind of rolls through very nicely from heel to toe, but it definitely feels more controlled to do that. And I think particularly those longer runs that I've done, I definitely preferred cruising at kind of on my half marathon and marathon pace in this shoe. And absolutely, this is a shoe that can work well for those shorter distances as well. And I've done a kind of 5k 10k paced runs in this shoe. It's felt absolutely fine, but it's really at those kind of cruising kind of race paces where I've really kind of warmed to the Edge. And I do feel like it feels more controlled, more stable than the previous shoes. I felt it more comfortable to do that as well. It's lost some of that kind of firmer feel. I think that, maybe put me off from spending more time in the Edge Tokyo. That put me off spending more time in the previous versions of the Edge. Now, in terms of kind of durability, outsole performance, outsole has worked fine. I've been mainly dry conditions. You're not getting huge amounts of rubber here. It's very similar to previous Metaspeed shoes. More rubber in the forefoot, less so in the heel. I'm a heel striker. I would expect to see more wear at that part of the shoe. It's what I've seen in previous versions of the shoe, but actually it's kind of fared pretty well so far. So maybe there is a boost in that kind of durability, but I do still think this is a shoe you save for race day, you save for your race pace training runs, and that's where you're gonna get the best out of this shoe. So overall, I've really enjoyed running in the Edge. As I said, this is probably my favorite version of the Edge shoe, and there's parts of me that are starting to kind of draw me towards the Edge over the Sky, which, as I said, they're very close to each other in terms of design, but there's some changes in that midsole, the design, the geometry, which I'm kind of liking what I've seen so far in my testing in the Edge Tokyo.
On to the verdict then, and I think the biggest compliment I can give the Metaspeed Edge Tokyo is I'm really desperate to use it in anger in an official marathon just to see how it compares to some of the other race shoes I've raced in. I've got the Chester Marathon and the Dublin Marathon coming up sort of within the next month, and I think I'm in good shape to go hunt a fast time, and I'm going to definitely lace this up for one of those. I'm not sure which yet. I was impressed by how smooth, light and efficient it felt. I think the Flight Foam Leap turbocharges the energy return and brings some additional cushion, and that's an effective combination. Though it is a different ride, I think, to the Sky Paris. It's all a bit softer, a little bit less snappy, and that's something that I've sort of tended to prefer, like the snappiness in my previous carbon ratios. Even the Puma Fast R3 has a bit more stiffness to it. But there's a lot of energy here, and I'm a fan of how consistent it felt at my paces from, a minute per mile, slower than marathon pace, right up to 5k pace. And so I'm interested to see how that holds out when you start to do, 3 hours trying to hit proper marathon pace for the whole thing. If you're on the hunt for a great race shoe for distances up to the marathon, then I think this is right up there with the best. It's hard to crown it before I've raced in it properly, but I'd say it's in my top 5 carbon race shoes, if not in the top 3. It's among the pricier carbon shoes, but I think you're getting premium performance for that, and I'd say on balance, I think it merits it. When you consider, you could pay the same for the Brooks Hyperion Elite 5, which is good but not as good, or more for the Cielo X12, and a big wedge more for shoes like the Endorphin Elite 2. I think it's actually, it's what we're paying for shoes right now at this kind of level.
So my verdict on the Metaspeed Edge Tokyo is this is a really good carbon plate racing shoe. For me, it's just still overshadowed by its peer. I prefer the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo myself, just purely on ride feel. I don't think there's a massive difference in performance. It just seems to suit my taste better, and the way it runs just feels better to me. A bit more pop off the toes, almost a lighter, more responsive feeling, even though the shoes are exactly the same weight. Got very similar materials all round. Edge Tokyo though, I think lots of runners will like it more. If you can try both, then please do that. Obviously, it's really hard to judge at a distance which one you're going to prefer, but if you like the Metaspeed Edge Paris, I think you're really going to like the Metaspeed Edge Tokyo, because I think it's a similar shoe with a slightly lighter weight design, with a bouncier, more responsive top layer of foam there in the midsole. So I'll just stick with the Edge line if you liked the Edge Paris, because the Edge Tokyo is going to be a really good shoe for you. If you prefer the Sky Paris, I probably would still stick with the Sky Tokyo, because again, that shoe is just a nice little improvement on the Sky Paris. Then if you're looking at the Metaspeed Ray, that is a lighter, softer shoe than the Edge Tokyo. It's a little bit less stable. It's incredibly bouncy with that FF Elite foam. It's a bit wobbly on the foot, but it's incredibly fun to run in. I think the Metaspeed Ray is a fantastic shoe that if you get on with it, if you like really soft shoes, if you're not worried about stability, I think it's a fantastic racing shoe. It's not going to be as durable as the Edge Tokyo. I think the Edge Tokyo is probably a safer bet and a more reliable option for people looking to spend a lot of money on a carbon shoe, but the Ray is a lot of fun. It's a really fantastic shoe. It just has some drawbacks in terms of stability and durability. And then outside the ASICS range, the Puma Fast R3 I think is one of the other really top racers on the market. I used it again recently. It's got a more mechanical feeling than the ASICS shoes, I would say. It really does drive your foot into a certain position, I find, on the run, and you can really feel the plate in action, and that creates a very efficient ride. It's not a very fun ride, I think, at times. Puma, sometimes I'm running in it, I'm running well here, and the paces are good, but I don't get as much joyful bounce out of that shoe as compared to something like the Metaspeed Ray. But I think for me, again, it's a more effective and efficient feeling shoe than the Metaspeed Edge Tokyo. I do prefer the Puma, but Edge Tokyo is even lighter than the Puma, and certainly another really good option you could consider. And I think in general, I think the Edge Tokyo can hold its own against any carbon plate shoe out there. It's just when ASICS has these two shoes, you are going to directly compare them a lot, and I just prefer the feel of the Sky Tokyo, but lots of people will prefer the Edge Tokyo, and I have no doubt after my testing that it is a very effective and impressive carbon racer if you do like its ride feel more than the Sky Tokyo.
So my take on the ASICS Metaspeed Edge Tokyo is that this is absolutely a super shoe, and it is one to keep and reserve for your faster days and particularly for your race days. Absolutely, I think it can work for shorter distance races. I think it will come into its own for kind of half marathon and marathon distances. I think in terms of the changes from the previous Edge, absolutely do make it a better shoe, and bringing it closer in line with the Sky, I think, is a good thing here. In terms of how it compares to those other Metaspeed shoes, I think I look at the time I spent with the Metaspeed Ray, it's definitely more stable than the Metaspeed Ray. I would feel more comfortable running longer in this shoe compared to the Ray as well, and you still get that fast, lovely feeling in this shoe compared to what I've really enjoyed running in as well and racing in. My early time in the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo is telling me that I feel that this is going to be a bit maybe better suited to hill strikers, and I am a hill striker, particularly from a kind of control and kind of stability side of things. What I really want to see is how it feels over longer runs, but from the longer runs I've done in the Edge Tokyo, I've really kind of enjoyed it. So absolutely, this is a super shoe that kind of sits in that kind of top tier of shoes. It is expensive. I do think that you're getting a little bit more kind of durability from the shoe than previous Metaspeed lines, so maybe that helps justify that price a little bit more, but it is expensive. If you are looking for a standout top tier kind of super shoe, absolutely this is one that fits the bill and one that I've enjoyed running in overall.
So there you have it. That has been our review of the ASICS Metaspeed Edge Tokyo. If you're interested in the Ray Tokyo and the Metaspeed Sky Tokyo, I'm going to pop videos up on the channel now that you should definitely check out. Otherwise, thanks very much for stopping by, and until next time, happy running, people.